welcome everybody. My name is Kenneth. As Jamie said, I work for Insighted within customer success team. And yeah, I have been working in this world of communities for a good 15 years. Previous to Insighted, I worked at Sonos, I worked at TomTom. It's close to my heart. That means I'm also, really excited to be here this week. Great to be at CMX with so many community lovers. And really a privilege to be able to do a little talk today. So my talk today is going to be fairly short and sweet. I have about 25 minutes, and what I'm aiming to do is to speak for about 20 minutes so that we have room for a couple of questions at the end. So do pop your questions into to the Q&A if you have any. So yeah, with that said, let's get started. The topic for today's talk is customer autonomy. This is something that we think about a lot at Insighted, something that's close to our hearts. What I'm really going to be talking about today is some themes around customer behavior and customer expectations that we see, that we observe evolving at the moment. And we want to share a little bit about what we see the best companies, the best of our customers doing to meet the needs of customers nowadays, what we call autonomous customers. And of course, what we're going to get to here is what this specifically means for us who work in the world of communities, what this means for the evolution of communities. So let me kick off, first of all, by setting a little bit of context around what we mean by customer autonomy. And what is the challenge that we're talking about here that companies are looking to meet? So let's start with a couple of data points. Here's a data point from, this is a study that BT together with Cisco did quite recently on autonomous customers. And they say that in the last year, 41% of customers have stopped using 2 or more brands because of a bad experience. Now, these are the types of data points a lot of us have probably seen in the past, will be somewhat familiar. They tell a familiar story, but this is really fresh data. And I'll follow this up with a few more data points that I really feel start to tell a story about autonomy. This is the first one, 41% about the poor experience. At the same time, 3 in 4 customers are buying more from companies that make it easier for them to do business with them. So we see the experience, we see effort playing a super important role. And this is where it gets interesting in the space of autonomy, is that we also know at the same time that nowadays, 81% of all customers are looking to take care of things themselves before they reach out to you as a company, before they actually reach out and want to talk to somebody. This is an extraordinary number, of course. This speaks a lot to autonomy of customers wanting to take control and solve things themselves. And what's really surprising and, well, may or may not be shocking to you is that only 21% of customers will rate the experience that organizations are offering in this space as excellent. So you can see the challenge. These 3 data points. We have a generation of autonomous customers looking to help themselves, and not a lot of companies are doing this right. And we might already think like, ooh, customer autonomy, what does that mean? Does that mean putting up some FAQs somewhere? Well, some years ago, that might have been a big part of the answer, but we don't believe that's the case anymore. We think that we're now talking about something more impactful and meaningful that's required to meet customer needs deeper. Who are these autonomous customers? Let's look a little bit more closely. We see that there is this generation now of digital natives who are using, they do their own research. They have high expectations, and they will choose companies that make their experience easy. Now, there's one more here, and this one is incredibly important if we work in any kind of company that has a subscription for the product or the service that we offer, right? So, and of course, we know that is a majority of companies these days are, if they're not already, becoming more and more subscription based. And what we see with this generation of customers is that they are not brand loyal, that they are making choices based on their own experience, their own research, and the feedback from peers. Now, this evolution expectations has been a while in the making. Yeah, we might actually look at some of these themes and think, yeah, well, you know, this is fairly common sense. But we also know that a lot of companies are not getting this right yet. A lot of companies are not meeting customer expectations in the way that customers expect. We saw that 21% at the beginning. What we observe among our customers, our best customers and the best companies out there that are doing this right, is that they are adopting a different mindset around the way that they think about customer experience. And I want to share a few of the key themes that we observe that are really central to this mindset shift that we think is necessary to empower customers and to meet the evolving needs of what we're calling autonomous customers. The first of these shifts is what I'm calling here the digital first mindset. Now, you might look at that and you might think, oh, that's a given, digital first mindset. Of course, we think of digital first. But if we look at a lot of organizations out there, and if we look at our own organization, I think it's good to take a really ask this in a very sincere way, because what we see is that there are still many, many companies and organizations out there who are, in the world of, for example, customer support, or maybe customer success or customer experience, where the vast majority of focus is still on one-to-one interaction channels. The best companies that we see are actually making digital self-service and empowering customers to be autonomous, making that central to their strategy rather than an afterthought. And not a lot of companies have really made this mindset shift yet. When you do this, one-to-one interactions are going to stay really important, but they are going to be reserved for moments when they really add value. So that might be a support phone call where you solve a complex problem, or a customer success interaction where you have a really meaningful conversation. So those are still going to be there, but the bulk of the rest of your strategy is going to be around empowering customers to be able to achieve their goals. Another mindset shift is what we're observing is around channels. And if you've, like me, been around for a few years, you might have noticed a few years ago there was this boom in channels that a lot of organizations were starting to offer to customers. It felt like at the time, like companies were starting to think that the secret to a great experience was just to offer this like buffet, this smorgasbord of channels to customers. You opened up Twitter and Facebook and Messenger, and you still had email, and you had like a ton of different channels. And the idea was that by giving customers choice, you were giving them a great experience. We see today that this is shifting. We see that really the best companies and the best customers that we work with, they are instead changing mindset and bringing focus to the customer, to the touch points and the channels that they offer to their customers. Email has been on the way out for a long time. That's not a shock, but we actually see a lot of companies starting to let go of some or even all of their social channels because they feel that those may not always be the most effective way to empower their customers. Mentioning chatbots here because they're still buzzing and they're still coming, and they play a role, of course, in what we're talking about here, but they are not the be all and end all, and they're not going to landscape. They do play a role, but a somewhat limited role. But what is really exciting here with all of us here being interested in communities, of course, is that communities today are hot and they are not going anywhere. I remember a few years ago when social channels were booming, chatbots were coming. Sometimes people would say and ask, hey, communities, forums, surely they're on the way out now, right? Surely that's like the past. And actually, that's not the case. We see a lot of really awesome cutting edge companies actually reducing their social channel presence, actually investing in communities. You can see Gartner here is seeing this booming inquiries in customer communities, and we're seeing that too. And I think probably a lot of you experience this as well, which is great for us here in the community space. Serving customer needs is another mindset shift, which is another one where you might look at that and go, well, of course we're serving customer needs. We're not just proactively solving problems. Of course we serve our customers. Our customers are everything. But one of the ways I think that you can really take an honest look at this and see whether you're really serving customer needs is to see what are you prioritizing in terms of metrics. Are you, for example, like a lot of organizations today, still spending a lot of time looking at cost to engage with customers, looking at cost reduction and so on, maybe a little bit of experience? That's very possible because a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are still thinking in that way. But what we see is that the best companies, our best customers, are shifting towards, they're looking at adoption, they're looking at growth metrics, and they're looking at retention. Of course, part of this is coming out of the booming customer success space that we're really passionate about and Insighted. But for customers across the board, we think this is a really important mindset shift to think differently about serving customer needs and serving autonomous customers. Finally, the one mindset shift which we wanted to highlight is the customer journey. And we see that, of course, the customer journey become a little bit of a cliche over the last years, right? Everybody going into rooms and whiteboarding journeys. And I think what we see is that the first thing to say about the customer journey is that there is no customer journey, at least no linear one. There's no single customer journey that's the same for all customers. So it makes more sense. It's smarter to think about the journey in terms of chapters, in terms of episodes, in terms of interaction loops, where you have customers who are at some point of their unique individual journey, and they will have a particular goal, which might be to solve a problem, but it might also be to get advice from a peer, might be to share some feedback or find a piece of information. And optimizing the journey as we see it is really about providing a place and a way for customers to do that without having to navigate a lot of fragmented, disconnected platforms and channels. That's really the key to optimizing the journey. And this is what we see the best companies starting to do, is to bring together all these different goals that customers might have in a holistic way for customers to be able to solve. So we've mentioned this mindset shift, and we've seen how important it is actually that we make a shift to meet the expectations and the needs of customers as they're evolving. And we've also seen that a lot of companies are actually still struggling with this. Mindset shifts are difficult. They can take time, especially if you're an organization that's been around for a while. But where it gets really exciting for us today is if you look at this emerging way to think about service, to think about customer success, and to really think about customers, we think communities are playing an amazingly important role in the way the best companies are starting to engage in this space. We think communities can be really integral in this emerging way. So let's dive into this unique role that we see communities are playing in the coming years around this space. So if you've been around the community space for a number of years like me, you'll remember what forums were not so many years ago. When I joined Sonos, I remember our original communities looked a lot like this here on the left, running on vBulletin. It was a great place and a great platform, a great support forum. But what we really see in terms of the evolution of communities, especially just in the last few years, is the crystallization of a broader set of use cases, which are really starting to take shape as essential parts of the community experience in the best communities that we see. So in this little illustration by Gartner, they're showing a little bit of this, and we can see that support is still here and still plays an important role. We see these additional use cases really becoming integral to the community experience a lot of the time. So the product roadmap, making that transparent and closing the loop, but also onboarding, adoption, education, that as a use case, really finding a way to help customers onboard and product or your service, as well as networking and events and making connections and joining groups with like-minded people, and of course elements of advocacy. All these use cases probably were a part of the community space years before, but we really see them crystallizing now in a more mature form and becoming part of the community experience in a really organized and beautiful way. Here's an example from one of our customers. They're a great company. They have a great platform. We use their platform a lot ourselves, awesome integrations. And this is their community. And one of the things you'll see straight off the bat here is that they have combined a number of these different use cases in a single destination, a single portal. So of course you can ask questions and you can get help, but you can also find educational content, onboarding content. There's the latest product information. There's deeper stuff for developers. There's also groups here and events and a lot of different resources and a lot all geared towards empowering customers to be autonomous. And what's really key here is that it's all gathered in a single portal. These all have existed in different tools and different places, and you could have maybe found them in a lot of different spots, but Zapier have combined everything into a single place. And this is really at the heart of what we're talking, at the heart of what we think is really important when it comes to empowering customers today. Now, when you choose to take this approach and you create like a community hub, engagement center, whatever you would choose to call it, it lives within your broader ecosystem, right? So you will still have other tools that are connected. You still have one-to-one channels and maybe even other one-to-many channels. But there is something unique happening in the community hub. So if you look at the customer intentions that we have here at the bottom, we've just sort of, in a very simple way, summarized what some of these use cases might be from a customer's perspective. We recently did some research together with Sonos, and we looked at their huge content there, super active. And we looked at how much of the content there was really about, these different use cases. And we found that only about half of all the content on the Sonos communities was related in some form to solving a problem. The other half was all in these other areas. It was about education, teachers, learning how to do things, finding out more, asking for advice, sharing feedback. And as we looked a little bit deeper, we really saw that all these use cases, all these types of questions and content were uniquely served on the community. Customers were here empowered to be able to achieve goals in these areas in a way that simply couldn't be done on any other touch point or any other place. So super powerful. Here's another example from a customer, another awesome product, another great customer. They have built a beautiful set of communities where they also have combined a number of different use cases. There's a number of things that you can do as a customer as you arrive here. There is community and conversations and Q&A, but there's also articles, there's groups for creators and artists. There's a beautiful, transparent product feedback. And what's maybe most important is that if you're a Deezer customer and the Deezer app, as you would be as a Deezer customer, if you need anything from Deezer in the app, there's really one link, and that link takes you to this portal where you have one place where you can achieve all these different goals as a customer tied to engagement. The key theme, at least one of the biggest themes for the coming few years in terms of where communities are going to evolve and how they're really going to take their place within the digital space. In the last year, we did some work together with Gartner, and Gartner fairly recently put out a great document, which I recommend reading, really specifically around customer communities. And this is just a little snippet from that piece, which speaks to the evolution of communities from that early phase that we talked about, from the customer support forum phase, to the last few years, where we see this crystallization of broader set of use cases. And where we are today is, we believe, really this point where we are transitioning towards communities becoming single meet points, hubs, centers that are really to scale customer engagement and to help customers, empower customers throughout their journey. We think this is really exciting, and we think this is where communities are going and where the big opportunity is. One more example from our customers. This is Looker, part of Google, and you can see the same theme just from looking at their homepage. They have combined a number of different possibilities empowering customers, and it's all here in one place. If you're new, if you want to ask questions, there's groups. There's a ton of possibilities here, and it's all combined in a single destination. It's really easy to find everything that you need. So we have a number of our customers who have really embraced this vision. What they tell us when they take this approach, they tell us that they get great results. Now, I'd recommend everybody to go to insided.com and look at some of the case studies that we. But just as a short tidbit, our customers tell us that yes, they're reducing costs. Communities have done that for years. But more importantly, our best customers are telling us that they are increasing growth. They're getting higher conversion rates. They're getting from community members, And as we saw earlier, these are the types of metrics which are really going to be critical in terms of building and growing a business and keeping your customers. So this is, for us, really exciting. To summarize kind of the point that we wanted to share today, if you're in the business where you are looking to keep your customers, to grow your business, you're looking to get, keep your customers happy, to keep your retention, we believe customers to be autonomous is super important. That is really key. And most importantly, we think that communities are central to this, that they can act as single point destinations that can really empower your customers to be autonomous in ways that no other platform. So this is something we think about a lot, something we're very excited about. I'm going to wrap up now, and I believe we might have just a couple of minutes for one or two questions. I will very quickly say that we have another session coming up soon with my colleague Remco. It's going to be talking to Nisha from Gong. I think it's going to be a great one, talking about customer relationships. So I recommend everybody jump into that as well. For now, I will stop sharing and see if we have time for just one or two questions.
Great, thanks, Kenneth. One thing that seems to be top of mind for people is the Gartner report available? Is that something people can get a hold of?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot. It's going to be available from Gartner. It's not something that I'm going to be able to distribute, unfortunately, at this point. So I'm afraid I would point folks to Gartner to pick that up.
No worries. Okay, so quickly, let's try and get a couple of questions in. We have one from Joy. Curious where you are categorizing communities that use social channels like Facebook.
Where I categorize, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think there is a great use case for those types of communities. We see that those are typically not enterprise communities. They're to build an engagement community. We have seen some communities transition over to our platform, after starting on Facebook. I would see that more as a pure engagement community, typically not enterprise, because of course you're missing SEO, you're missing Google, and you're missing some capabilities when you're on Facebook's platform and you don't have your own platform where you really can build something unique to your offering on your own domain.
All right. One from Haley. Do you have any tips to help steer community spaces away from being used for support?
That's wonderful. I think, first of all, communities tend to really be driven by your end users and your customers. So, we see sometimes companies have built a marketing community and it turned out to be a support community because that's what people did and that's what they wanted. They couldn't necessarily really control that. But at the same time, I do think that even if you have a support community, all those other use cases are in some form happening. There's always going to be an element of engagement. There's always going to be an element of feedback. Those flavors are always there, even in the most focused support community. So I think what you can always do is find ways to emphasize that, bring it more to the surface, create dedicated spaces where people can achieve those types of goals as well. So product feedback areas, ideation, engagement areas, just bring a little bit more emphasis to those areas and then see what works, because it needs to resonate with your end users. There's got to be an overlap. If it doesn't resonate, it won't work. But you can experiment and move your community to be more broad than just a support community. That's what we really believe in, for sure.
All right. I think that's us at time. So really appreciate all of that. Loads of great insight, loads of good comments there in the chat. So thanks everyone for participating and for being here. And yeah, go back to the lobby and enjoy the rest of the awesome sessions that are coming up. Thanks again, Kenneth.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.